Hello there, and as usual, I'm Aaron from Let's Stay Gamers, and welcome. So today, we're looking at a very interesting feature, something that Marek mentioned in one of his blog posts last week, but I left a little bit of time so you guys could have a look at it, configure your sort of thoughts for it, and it seemed like you wanted to hear my opinions as well. So today we're going to have a little bit of a read through the actual post itself, and I'll tell you some of my opinions, and I would love to hear some of yours. So let's get started by looking at the post. Now, if you follow Space Engineers as well as I do, you've probably seen this post already, and by them just saying planets, oxygen, DirectX 11 optimizations, you're already on the edge of your seat. You've probably fallen off your chair in some cases. So the first things I want to cover about this actual post itself, this is them announcing it so they don't keep us in the dark. Another great step for the Space Engineers community and the developers themselves, just keeping us highlighted along the path to the finish of the game. So as we move on a little bit further, he goes, everything in this blog is subject to change, and that is very, very true. Things are not going to be exactly how you plan them out to begin with. So let's just move straight on to planets and oxygen. So when they started work on Space Engineers, they were never really sure if they wanted to introduce planets and oxygen. And as I have said, I've always been trying to build little stations, building fake planets on asteroids and stuff, and it's something that really excites me, and it seems to excite the community as well, because from your feedback, it's something that they want to add into the game. Now, that is all good and dandy, but a lot of these optimizations and things have been made possible by medieval engineers that has already taken such things like the skybox and worked out different sorts of concept trees and different parts of that natural sort of Earth-like environment that they can expand into a sort of planets. So the first thing I want to look at is oxygen and how it would actually work. Now, they talk about this as something that's not just a planet-based thing, something that would actually fill the compartments of your ship, so there'd have to be some sort of pressurized system. It would fill it in a volumetric sort of grid method, so any area that's closed off, maybe you'd have to have some sort of oxygen generator or filter. Could be really exciting, really cool. And they said they've got a similar sort of system in the conveyors already, so it won't be too much to expand onto that. But then this is a little bit that worries me. Looking for a reason to take off your helmet and enjoy the sort of oxygen filled environment. He goes into a great depth in explaining that if there's no reason to do it, why would someone take off the helmet? So I mean, you guys have got to think of some good ideas, reason to take off your helmet. I mean food has been on the agenda secretly of mine for a very long time, and I back that up. I think food would be really cool. Take your helmet off, have a different sort of lifeline as well. Also, your suit maybe doesn't discharge, so when you're running around your ship, you don't have to worry about keeping your ship charged because you can just use the oxygen aboard the ship. There's many other sorts of ideas, and I'd like to hear some of yours as well. So as we move a little bit further, they talk about the size of these asteroids, and the planets themselves would be just really large asteroids with sort of large terrain volumes that would be randomly generated. And they talk a little bit about how the terrain generator at the moment would generate quite crazy sorts of planets, but they're still going to be trying to work on that and get that to work. So the next thing we're looking at is something that's going to make a really big difference, and this is how the planets would actually be shaped. He goes into a little bit of detail talking about how they would place station blocks on a planet that is round, since they form all on one grid at the moment, and that is something to really think about, because at the moment it'd mean that you'd get to a rounded part of the planet and you couldn't just keep going. So their sort of solution would be possibly to have blocks that are free to place, so you can actually follow the curvature of the planet, and obviously that would make a whole other variety of problems that they'd have to work around and try to build off, but I'm sure that'd be extremely exciting to actually have a mess around with. I don't know, you'd have to tell me, would you be happy with square planets, or would you prefer round ones? I mean, round ones would be totally realistic, but getting the blocks to fit around and perfect with the current system would be extremely hard. Now, before we finish on the oxygen and planet sort of thing, and we move on to having a look at the rest of the post, he talks a little bit about he doesn't want to penalise players for taking off their helmet, and say everyone at the moment is used to actually keeping their helmet on, just flying around usually and enjoying themselves. But the real problem is if you start taking that player off and force people to take the player off, will it decline from the gameplay? Will it turn more into something that you don't want to do, and it's like, oh, one more thing I have to do before I can build, and so on, just delay the process that what Space Engineers is all about, building and constructing spaceship stations and all that madness. Anyway, let's move on to actually have a look at the DirectX and some of the graphics and thingy optimizations. So if you've seen any of the videos that I've been posting on Medieval Engineers, you'll notice that it's in a new DirectX 11 render, and it's using PBR, that's basically physics-based rendering, that allows you to define surface textures with like a very realistic sort of appearance, and that is something they're hoping to bring to Space Engineers as well. I mean, it looks realistic enough, but I don't know. They've got additional benefits here: multi-threaded rendering, more efficient processing and generating of geometry, smooth level of detail, transition based on screen plates. It's just things that add that extra little bit of performance and look to the game. And if we go a little bit further down, we can even read a little bit more and have a look at some of these pictures of this new reconfigured gravity generator with a lot more polygons by the look of it. So something else that's quite interesting is how they're going to be keeping the original art style of the game with ever so slight modifications. As you can see, we've got some pictures of the latest gravity generators and the previous ones, and it is a step up. It's looking far better. I mean, if they take pride in all the models, just like this gravity generator, the blocks are going to look absolutely amazing, and they'll just fit into ships so well. If we keep moving on a little bit further, you can also see we've got multiple level of details for blocks as well. So at different render distances, you're going to have different levels of detail, where at the moment, some of them just pop in and pop out at then different distances, and it's making it just a lot more fun to play and a lot more beautiful to actually have a look at. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is for Xbox One users. Now, for me, this doesn't really affect me because I'm a PC guy, and probably a lot of you are playing it on the PC, but the ones that want it to come to Xbox One, they're talking a little bit about the multiplayer and networking, and how a lot of the networking at the moment relies heavily on Steam, and they plan on moving this so they can actually get better control of the message, change the channel priorities and reduce multiplayer lag in sort of waiting periods. So it's just really going to be effective, and they're just trying to adapt it, and I just love the work that these developers are doing. They're really putting the back in, and where some games don't update for months, these guys are updating every single week, putting some really good effort into a game that I think is going to become absolutely amazing. Bring on them planets. Anyway, I'd like to really hear what you guys have to think about this, and I'll see you next time.